Welcome, once again, to the Unsleeping Historian. Tonight, as the moonlight filters gently across the wooden beams of an old stage, we invite you to drift into the sights and sounds of Elizabethan London, an era of poetic ambition, political uncertainty, a time when the English language, still restless and stretching its limbs, found a champion in a man named William Shakespeare. But tonight, we do not center our story on the bard himself. Instead, we turn our lantern toward the lesser-known figures, those who brought his words to life, day after day, rain or shine. The men and boys who formed the troupe known as the Lord Chamberlain's men, the players, the actors, those brave enough to wear another's skin in a world that often showed them little kindness. In this story, you will live a day in their threadbare shoes. You'll feel the damp planks of the globe beneath your feet, hear the raucous murmur of the crowd, and strain under the weight of memorized lines you may only perform once before moving on to the next. Later, we will step away from the footlights and follow the swell of sails and cannon smoke in the clash of the Spanish Armada. Then, we'll slip into quieter, and finally, we'll rise to the glittering court of Queen Elizabeth I, where power danced in measured steps, and silence often spoke louder than words. But for now, let us settle beneath the thatched roof of the globe. The sun is rising over Southwark, and somewhere, an actor is already mouthing his lines, voice hoarse from yesterday's performance, mind heavy with tomorrow's fears. Imagine yourself there. Segment 1. Life as a player in the Lord Chamberlain's men. The streets of London in the late 1500s did not welcome the wandering actor with open arms. Theirs was a precarious life. While their voices echoed through open-air theaters and their gestures brought laughter or tears to hundreds, they themselves walked a narrow line in society, neither fully respected nor legally protected. To be an actor was, in the eyes of many, to be little more than a vagrant with flair, actors and outcasts. Imagine yourself waking up on a straw-stuffed pallet in a cramped room above a tavern. You are not poor by the standards of the city's poorest, but neither are you, far from hunger. Your clothing is threadbare in places, borrowed or repurposed from former costumes. Each morning, you fold yourself into the identity of another Hamlet, perhaps, or a nameless soldier slain before intermission. But to the law, you are not Hamlet. You are not noble. You are, quite simply, a rogue. The Elizabethan poor laws deemed masterless men, those without steady employment or noble patronage, suspicious. Without the protection of a wealthy sponsor, an acting troupe could be arrested for gathering in public, or accused of fomenting disorder. This is why companies like the Lord Chamberlain's men sought out the backing of powerful nobles. It was not mere vanity. It was survival, the rotating repertory, memory under pressure. Your day begins early, well before the play. The troupe does not perform just one show in a season. Instead, a single week might see 5 or 6 different productions. This week might include Henry IV, The Merchant of Venice, As You Like It, and something entirely new, penned only days ago. There are no printed scripts for you to study in the quiet of your own home. The cost of paper is high, and the risk of intellectual theft even higher. Instead, you are handed only your lines and the cue words that precede them. You do not see the whole. You build your performance from fragments. It's a little like trying to memorize a song when you've only ever heard your own harmony. And there is always the pressure of tomorrow. If today you are playing a melancholy prince, tomorrow you may be a comedic fool. The contrast is dizzying, and yet, you must remain fluent in both sorrow and laughter. The Globe, theater without a roof. By midday, you are pacing backstage. The Globe is already filling. Its wide, circular shape echoes with footsteps and murmurs. This open-air theater stands proudly on the south bank of the Thames, near enough to London proper to attract crowds, but distant enough to remain beyond the watchful eyes of the city's strictest officials. The air is heavy with the scent of damp wood, roasted nuts, and unwashed bodies. The stage is a wooden platform jutting out into the crowd, exposed to the sky. Rain does not pause the performance. It simply changes its texture. You speak your lines against the wind. You time your words to the hush and swell of the audience. You perform while street hawkers call from just beyond the theater walls and children cry in the gallery seats. In the yard standing room, tickets have drawn in the groundling. Energetic patrons who cheer, jeer, and occasionally throw things if displeased. They are the heart of your audience, and the most unpredictable element of the day. Boys who wore the faces of women. You may be nearing 30. You may have a voice that booms and eyes that pierce through candlelight. But Juliet is played by Tomas, a boy of 13, whose voice still trembles with youth. He is taught not only to speak the lines, but to move with a practiced softness, to embody what men imagined femininity to be. When the tragedy reaches its climax and the lovers part forever, Thomas's tears may be real, he is exhausted. After all, but they are not his own. This tradition is not new, nor unusual in Elizabethan England, but it adds another layer to the strange, layered illusion that is the stage. You perform roles within roles, love within fiction, fiction within survival, plague and uncertainty at any moment. The play may be cancelled. If the deaths from plague rise above a certain number, often around 30 per week, theaters must close by law. Weeks can stretch into months without a single performance. In such times, you might try to earn your keep in the traveling with your troupe through smaller towns, performing in inns and villages. But the road is rough, and audiences there can be fickle. Some fear your presence brings plague. Others simply do not understand the poetry you offer. You might write, if you have the talent and the means. Some actors become playwrights, others fade into silence. The shimmer of fame, the shadow of debt. You may dream of fame. If you are truly fortunate, perhaps your name will appear in a printed folio. Perhaps, one day, someone will speak of Richard Burbage, or Will Kemp with the same reverence they reserve for the gentry. But most actors are not remembered. Even if you are a star, your pay is inconsistent. A successful play might bring in a share of the profits, but that depends on your place in the company. Many actors remain paid by the week, their earnings no match for the cost of costumes, lodging, and sustenance. And yet you return, day after day. You return because the stage gives you something few other places in the world will. A place to be seen, a name. As we leave behind the candlelit dressing rooms and the patched velvet cloaks of the stage, the noise of London grows softer. The curtain falls for now. But not all battles in Shakespeare's England were fought with words. In our next chapter, we take to the sea, where sails met storm, and nations trembled. Segment 2, the biographies/event narrative, the defeat of the Spanish Armada. Let your thoughts drift now from the heavy boards of the globe, from the cries of street hawkers and the scuff of actors' boots. Drift instead toward the Sitha endless, murmuring expanse of grey water that surrounds this island nation. It is the year 1588. Queen Elizabeth I sits upon the throne of England, and across the Channel, another monarch sharpens his gaze toward her. Philip II of Spain, ruler of the vast and wealthy Spanish Empire, has set into motion a grand design. A fleet, mighty and devout, will sail from Spain, join with a land army in the Netherlands, and crush the Protestant queen. This fleet, he calls the Armada, invincible, the invincible Armada. But as we shall see, not all that is named invincible remains so. The world before the storm. Imagine the map of Europe at this time not with clean borders and names, but as a tense quilt of shifting loyalties, old grievances, and religious fault lines. Protestant England, under Elizabeth, stood as a thorn in Catholic Spain's side. Elizabeth had refused Philip's offers of marriage. She had sanctioned deprivators, state-sponsored pirates, like Francis Drake, to harass Spanish treasure ships returning from the Americas, and she had supported rebellious Protestants in the Spanish Netherlands. To Philip, this was not only a political affront, but a spiritual one. He envisioned a holy crusade, the restoration of Catholic England under a pliant ruler, his cousin, Mary, Queen of Scots. But Mary had been executed, and now Philip resolved to act. And so the great fleet was assembled. The Armada set sail. Picture it now, May of 1588. From the port of Lisbon, ships begin to glide into formation. Galleons, supply vessels, and heavily armed fighting ships, all under the command of the Duke of Medina. Though noble, Medina Sidonia is not a seaman by trade. His stomach turns in heavy weather, and he lacks experience in naval warfare. But he has loyalty, and more importantly, he has no desire to disobey his king. In all, the Armada numbers around 130 ships, carrying some 30,000 men, soldiers, sailors, priests, and servants. Their mission: sail through the English Channel, rendezvous with the Duke of Parma's army in the Netherlands, and ferry it across to invade southern England. It is an ambitious plan, but it rests on delicate timing, cooperation between land and sea, and the ever-changing moods of the English weather. England prepares. Across the Channel, England watches the horizon. QueenElizabeth.com, and composed in the face of danger, orders her navy to be ready. The English fleet, while smaller, is faster and more agile. It is commanded by seasoned men like Lord Charles Howard and the flamboyant Francis Drake. Ever the opportunist, had once sacked Spanish ports in the Caribbean and captured their silver-laden ships. Now, he prepares for battle closer to home. The English Navy has a tactical edge. Its ships are designed not to ram and board, but to move quickly and fire from a distance. Their cannon are long-range, and their crews The English ships are not just instruments of war, they are dancers upon the waves. The first encounter, in late July, the Armada is spotted off the coast of Cornwall. Beacons blaze from hill to hill, sending signals through the night. Townspeople pray, soldiers muster, and the fleet sets out to meet the enemy. The two forces engage near Plymouth. English ships, taking advantage of the wind and their nimble design, harry the Armadas, never committing fully, but never letting them rest. It is a game of attrition. For days, the Armada creeps along the channel, under constant pressure. The Spanish form a defensive crescent, their ships close together, protecting the weaker vessels within, but the English continue to prod and sting, aiming to disrupt their formation. Calais. By early August, the Armada anchors off Calais, still awaiting the Duke of Parma's army, which has not yet arrived. Communication is poor. The Flemish ports are blockaded. The Spanish ships sit vulnerable, heavy, and slow to maneuver in the tight anchorage. It is here that the English unleash one of their most effective tools: fire ships. Imagine it. Under the cover of night, unmanned English vessels are set ablaze, their sails catching fire, and they drift silently toward the anchored Armada. The flames flicker like ghostly banners against the sky. In panic, Spanish ships cut their anchors and scatter to avoid the inferno. The formation is broken. Confusion reigns. The Battle of Grime. Seizing the opportunity, the English attack at Grime. Here, the battle becomes more fierce, more personal. Cannon roar in rhythm. Smoke clings to the surface of the sea. Ships creak and groan as splinters fly. The English use their long-range guns to deadly effect. Spanish ships, designed for boarding rather than gunplay, struggle to respond. The Duke of Medina Sidonia attempts to rally his forces, but the tide is turning. And then the weather speaks. The wind and the will of the sea as the Armada retreats northward around Scotland and Ireland. The skies darken. Storms, relentless and unforgiving, scatter the already battered fleet. Ships run aground on rocky shores. Many are lost. Some sailors drown. Others are captured or killed by locals. Only about half of the Armada returns to Spain. They bring with them not triumph, but tales of cold, starvation, and defeat. Elizabeth's moment. Back in England, victory is celebrated not with indulgent revelry, but with a solemn sense of deliverance. Queen Elizabeth, in armor and white gown, addresses her troops at Tilbury. Her voice is steady, her words measured. Assured will echo through history. I know I have the body of a weak, feeble woman, but I have the heart and stomach of a king. Her rule is England, still vulnerable, begins to walk taller. The Spanish threat has not vanished, but it has been humbled. The idea of England as a sea power, a defiant island kingdom, begins to take shape here, among salt and storm. The broader ripples. The defeat of the Spanish Armada is not the end of conflict, nor the beginning of peace, but it is a turning point, a symbol. In theaters like the Globe, the drama of nations is echoed in fictional battles. Shakespeare's plays begin to take on deeper hues of patriotism, destiny, and divine right. And the actors, those weary players we met earlier, perform for a public still stirred by the sea. They act out kings and queens, nobles and sailors. They speak of power, betrayal, and fate. But the memory of real cannon fire, still recent, still vivid, lingers in the minds of many. Now, let the sea quiet. Let the cannons fall silent. The waves recede. And in their place, something gentler takes root. In our next chapter, we look not to ships or swords, but to petals and sprigs tucked into dialogue. We'll explore the secret meanings of plants in Shakespeare's works, and the quiet language spoken through flora. Segment 3. The Mystery. Archaeology. Culture. Deep dive. The hidden language of flowers in Shakespeare. As the smoke of naval battles drifts far beyond the horizon, we step into a gentler world, one rich with fragrance, color, and quiet meaning. It is a world tucked between the lines of poetry and the folds of Elizabethan garden. A world where a sprig of rosemary may say more than a paragraph of prose, and where the wilting of a violet might carry more weight than the fiercest curse. This is the hidden language of flowers, a subtle, almost whispered form of communication, woven carefully into the fabric of Shakespeare's plays. Let us wander now into this secret garden. Slowly, flora in the Elizabethan mind, to understand the significance of flowers in Shakespeare's time. we must first understand their place in the Elizabethan imagination. In the late 16th century, flowers were not merely decorative, they were medicinal, symbolic, and often sacred. The language of plants called floriography in later centuries was not codified in the way it would be in the Victorian era. Still, meanings were widely understood, passed through folklore, herbal manuals, and common knowledge. Flowers carried associations as old as memory itself. Physicians consulted books like John Gerard's published in 1597, which detailed hundreds of plants and their uses. Apothecaries prepared poultices, tinctures, and teas from humble blossoms. Lovers exchanged posies laced with hidden intention, and playwrights, like Shakespeare, layered their scripts with botanical allusions that spoke volumes, often without explanation. Ophelia's flowers, a tragic bouquet. Nowhere is this language more powerfully expressed than in the hands of Ophelia. In Hamlet, shortly before her death, Ophelia enters with arms full of herbs and wildflowers. Her mind, unmoored by grief, spills over into song and symbolism. There's rosemary, that's for remembrance. She offers rosemary long associated with memory and fidelity. In some traditions, mourners wore sprigs of rosemary at funerals, as if to carry the memory of the departed into the earth. Pray you, love, remember. Then she moves on. And there is pansies. That's for thoughts. Pansies, from the French, were a symbol of thoughtfulness or reflection. In giving them, Ophelia, perhaps, pleads for understanding, or mourns the loss of reason. There's fennel for you. Fennel was often a symbol of flattery or deceit. Columbines, delicate and nodding, could signify ingratitude or foolishness. Some interpreted these as barbs, to ward Queen Gertrude and King Claudius. There's rue for you, and here's some for me. Rue, bitter and sharp in scent, was known for its medicinal properties, but also its sorrowful symbolism. It was associated with regret and repentance. Ophelia assigned it to both herself and others. And there is a daisy. I would give you some violets, but they withered all when my father died. The daisy a sign of innocence, and the violets, for faithfulness, have perished. Her final offering is not a flower, but its absence. Through this bouquet, Ophelia speaks in a language more raw and revealing than any monologue. Each plant chosen, whether intentionally by her or by Shakespeare, tells part of her unraveling story. Floral symbolism across the plays, Ophelia may be the most famous, but she is not alone. In A Midsummer Night's Dream, the mischief of the fairies is tied directly to Flora. Oberon speaks of a flower struck by Cupid's arrow, yet marked I where the bolt of Cupid fell. It fell upon a little western flower, before milk white, now purple with love swoon. And maidens call it this flower, a species of pansy, becomes the source of enchantment. When its juice is dropped upon the eyes, it causes the victim to fall madly in love with the next creature seen. In this way, the flower becomes both agent and metaphor, a symbol of love's power to In The Winter's Tale, Perdita speaks lovingly of various flowers as she distributes them to guests at a springtime celebration. Her speech reflects not only botanical knowledge but careful nuance. Here's flowers for you. Hot lavender, mints, savory, the marigold. That goes to bed double the sun, and with him rises weeping. Here, marigolds are tied to the sun, 2 cycles of sorrow and renewal. Lavender and mint suggest memory and virtue. These aren't mere decorations, they are reflections of character and situation. The Queen's garland, Elizabethan, botanical identity. Even Queen Elizabeth herself embraced the symbolic power of plants. In portraits, she is often surrounded by flowers, roses, in particular, being most prominent. The Tudor rose, a fusion of red and white, symbolized the unification of warring houses under her father, Henry VIII. The rose became more than a floral motif. It was an emblem of purity, beauty, and divine right. To wear a rose was not only to honor tradition, but to subtly reinforce allegiance to the crown. Herbal motifs adorned clothing, tapestries, and even the margins of royal proclamations. Gardens were not merely for pleasure, but expressions of order, hierarchy, and control over nature, a reflection of Elizabeth's own political reign. The theater's bouquets, real and imagined. In the Globe and other playhouses, flowers could be both literal props and unseen symbols. A sprig of basil tucked into a costume sleeve, a painted garland on a backdrop. These small details carried meaning to those who knew how to read them. And even when no flower appeared on stage, its mention could conjure its presence in the mind. Consider Juliet. In her plea to Romeo, what's in a name? That which we call a rose, by any other name would smell as sweet. The rose becomes not just a flower, but a philosophical device. It argues for love beyond labels, for truth beyond lineage. It is softness in a world of harsh divides. The language lives on, though. The Elizabethans did not formalize floriography into dictionaries and codes. The meanings were understood. They lived in the margins of sermons, in the habits of folk medicine, and in the gestures of the garden. Centuries later, the Victorians would adopt this quiet language with enthusiasm, assigning meanings to hundreds of plants, creating floral alphabets and courtship books. But the roots of that tradition's whispering petals began much earlier, in the shadows of Shakespeare's stage. A garden in the mind, and so, as you rest now, imagine a garden not manicured or perfect, but wild and sincere. Lavender for peace of mind, violets for faith, rosemary for the things you wish to remember. Let the scent of these old flowers drift around you, carried on the soft breath of verse. Let their meanings settle where they will like petals falling to the ground, each one small, but not insignificant. Soon, we shall enter a very different world, one of stiff collars, jeweled silks, and carefully measured glances. A world where every word is weighed, and silence often speaks volumes. Segment 4. The Social Elite. Contrasting daily life. Day at the court of Queen Elizabeth I. The noise of the city fades once more. Beyond the narrow lanes of Southwark and the floral sighs of Shakespeare's stage, we arrive at a place set apart physically, politically, and symbolically. A world of ritual and refinement, of whispered ambition and orchestrated silence. We enter now the royal court of Queen Elizabeth I. Here, everything has meaning. A glance can be a challenge, a garment, a statement, a pause more perilous than a speech. Life at court is not lived but performed, and the stakes are far higher than applause. Approaching the court, imagine yourself on horseback, riding slowly through the manicured parks that encircle one of the Queen's palaces, perhaps Richmond, or Whitehall, or the seasonal splendor of night. Ahead rise tall gates of wrought iron, guarded not by men in armor, but by expectation itself. Entry into the Queen's presence is no casual affair. It requires petition, invitation, and the silent approval of many unseen hands. And once within, you do not simply meet the Queen. You wait, in corridors scented faintly with beeswax and herbs, amid hushed courtiers and the quiet scratch of quills on parchment. You bide your time. This is the true rhythm of court life, not dramatic, but deliberate. The Privy Chamber and the Great Hall. Elizabeth's palaces are organized not by function alone, but by intimacy. The outer chambers are public, filled with nobles, petitioners, and foreign emperors. As you move inward, each space becomes more exclusive, more trusted, more symbolic of favor. The Great Hall, where courtly entertainments are held, may dazzle with its tapestries and but the true power lies in the Privy Chamber, where only the closest attendants, nearly all women, may move freely. To be invited even once into the Privy Chamber is to be marked. To serve there regularly is to be feared as much as admired. And above all presides the Queen, Elizabeth the monarch, the symbol. Elizabeth is now in her 50s, composed, careful, and entirely aware of her image. She wears not just a gown, but a statement. Silk, velvet, and pearls cloak her from neck to toe. Her ruff frames her face like a sunburst, drawing attention upward, as if her eyes alone hold the light. Her hands, gloved in white, may extend to receive a kiss but rarely to embrace. To see her is to see the realm itself. To hear her speak is to hear policy, poetry, and prophecy. And yet, for all her control, Elizabeth is not aloof. She listens. She observes. She plays the court's many games with the precision of a seasoned player, and none may claim to know her completely. A court of rituals, each day at court, is punctuated, not by bells or clocks. A noblewoman may spend hours preparing her dress, knowing that the Queen notices not only fabric and cut, but the subtle message it conveys. One may wear green to imply freshness and loyalty, or to recall the Queen's own favored hues, but wear it better than she, and you may not be invited back. Men bow low, women curtsy with sweeping grace. Even laughter is measured, lest it be seen as impolite or mocking. There are dances, yes, but they are not free. They are structured, stylized, almost choreographed negotiations of status and proximity. The language of favor. To be in favor at court is to live in a constant state of tension. One day you may be granted lands, titles, or commissions. The next, you may be exiled, accused, or simply forgotten. Gifts are exchanged not out of generosity, but obligation. Poems are written not for love, but for advancement. A well-placed sonnet may secure your place for another season. A poorly timed jest may seal your fate. And yet, ambition hums beneath every smile. Courtiers jostle for proximity to the queen, not only physical closeness, but emotional, symbolic, political. A glance from Elizabeth can elevate. A withheld word can end a career. The queen's inner circle among her closest advisors are figures like Sir William practical, deeply loyal, and Sir Francis Walsingham, whose network of spies helps protect the queen from foreign plots and domestic betrayal. Then there are the favorites, the ones whispered about in corridors and scrawled into letters passed by candlelight. Robert Dudley, Earl of Leicester, Elizabeth's childhood friend, long rumored to be more handsome, ambitious, often resented by other courtiers. He walks the line between affection and advantage. Later, the dashing Earl of Essex will rise and fall in similar fashion, first adored, then suspected, then condemned. The queen, always aware, always watching, balances her heart against her crown. She marries no man, yet entertains many suitors. Her celibacy becomes both political armor and personal mystery, entertainment and At night, the court glows with candles and music. Masks are performed, elaborate allegorical dramas where myth and monarchy intertwine. All is artifice, and all is intended to please the queen. But beneath the performance, always, is strategy. Foreign ambassadors take mental notes. Domestic rivals watch each other with narrowed eyes, and Elizabeth smiles, the axis upon which the entire stage turns, the contrast to the player's life. Think now of the actor, from earlier mood on his boots, breath rising in cold morning air, clutching his lines and his wages with equal anxiety. And now, think of a courtier, his doublet stiff with embroidery, his smile calculated, his fortune balanced on the mood of the monarch. One performs for pennies, the other for power, but both live on edge. In both worlds, image is everything. Both actor and courtier must read the crowd, memorize roles, and speak lines that may or may not be true. Both are subject to sudden reversals, unexpected applause, and unseen critics. The court may be gilded, but it is no less a stage, Elizabeth's final act. As the years pass, Elizabeth ages with deliberate grace. Her hair, once red, is now a carefully maintained wig. Her teeth, worn and blackened, are hidden behind her famously closed smile. She becomes, more and more, a symbol rather than a woman. In 1603, after 44 years on the throne, she passes quietly, the Virgin Queen at last succumbing to the one thing no power can withstand. Her courtiers weep. Her enemies breathe more easily. Her people, many of whom have never known another monarch, look to the horizon with uncertainty. And yet, her legacy endures in sonnets, in plays, in portraits, and in the quiet, daily rituals of a court that once revolved around her like planets about the sun. And now ... the stage is empty. The sea is calm once more. The flowers have shed their petals. The corridors of the royal court lie hushed in the early morning silence. Tonight, you have wandered far from the damp backstage corners of the globe to the windswept decks of Spanish galleons, from a bouquet held by a grieving girl to the jeweled hand of a queen. You've traced the uneven footsteps of a working actor, memorizing his lines by candlelight, treading the boards under an open sky, his voice competing with wind and hecklers alike. You've heard the thunder of warships, in the creak of wooden hulls as England stood at the edge of invasion. You've knelt beside Ophelia and her withered violets, reading meaning in every stem and leaf. And you've walked the measured pace of Elizabeth's court, where power spoke not in shouts but in silences. And through it all, the rhythm of their lives echoed. It was a rhythm of survival, of artistry, of danger and grace, where the performer, soldier, herbalist, or noble each one was caught in the great, swirling dance of Elizabethan England. And yet, as different as their worlds seemed, they were all united by illusion. The illusion of the stage, where tragedy becomes safe entertainment. The illusion of battle, where glory is spoken of more than grief. The illusion of flowers, saying what voices dare not. And the illusion of court, where loyalty and ambition share the same smile. Perhaps it is fitting that Shakespeare lived and wrote in this time, giving language to what others only dared feel. His plays, his characters, his verses all shimmer with the truths of a deeply contradictory world. A world where filth and beauty lived side by side, where laughter rang out in plague years, where roses bloomed among swords, and where a queen neither wife nor mother could rule an empire with the force of will and velvet glove. As you settle into your own stillness, think of those players, those sailors, those ladies and spies. Their lives are long gone now, their names carved into history or lost entirely to it. But for a little while, they've kept you company. Their stories have flickered softly around you like candlelight on stone walls. And now ... they dim. Let them fade gently. Let them rest. And may you rest, too. Until we meet again, under another sky, in another time. This has been the Unsleeping Historian. Sleep well.